This is No Password Required. We're recording today's episode in late September, and I tell you that because it's almost Halloween. And that's appropriate because if you're concerned about cybersecurity, what we're going to be talking about will likely scare you. And that's just with what's going on now. That's bad enough. Wait until you hear what's about to happen. That's coming up next on No Password Required.
No Password Required is a presentation of Cyber Florida, located on the Tampa campus of the University of South Florida.
Hello, I'm Bill McQueen. On this edition of No Password Required, I'm joined by Roger Grimes. Roger has worked in the cybersecurity industry for more than 30 years. Now he is with KnowBefore.com, which bills itself as the world's largest security awareness training vendor. Roger has worked for Microsoft and McAfee. He's written 11 books, more than 1,000 national articles. He's a blogger and a much-in-demand speaker on the topic of cybersecurity. Roger, welcome to No Password Required.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here, Bill.
You describe yourself as a data-driven defense evangelist. Why evangelist?
Well, I guess getting the word out. So data-driven, actually, I think is the bigger piece, is that you'd be surprised, but most companies do not actually try to fight the biggest reasons why they're being attacked. Like there's literally, last year, there were 16,555 different software vulnerabilities you have to patch against, and all kinds of hackers and nation-state hackers and script kiddies and financial script. And people hear so much, it's like an onslaught, like a waterfall of attacks, that they kind of lose what they really should be focusing on. And it turns out there's only 2, maybe 3 things you really need to worry about. Everything else is just background noise. So Data-Driven Defense Evangelist, it's actually a title off of one of my books, and I was lucky enough to be able to create a working title around it, my employment title. But it really talks about, hey, look at how you're successfully attacked the most, which is social engineering and unpatched software, and concentrate on those 2 things because they account for 99% of the risk. So the evangelism part is letting people know, hey, there's a whole lot of ways you can be attacked, but 2 of those things are almost all the risk. And if you don't focus on putting those down, the rest doesn't matter.
And like any good evangelist, you're trying to spread the word.
Yep,
okay.
Exactly.
Your company, Know Before. I mean, that could be a mantra for cybersecurity. Know before you open something, before you click on it, before you respond. Your job is to be a paid penetration tester, essentially a paid hacker, correct?
Yeah, I would say I don't do that. So I've done that for 20 years, and every place I've broken into, paid to break into, I've broken into in an hour or less, except for one place that took me 3 hours, and that's because it was the second time I was back there. These days, it's more talking about hacking, showing people how they could be hacked. So I'm not actively breaking into companies, being paid to break into companies anymore, but I am spreading the word across tens of thousands of people a year. Hey, this is how you could get attacked. So I do a lot of presenting on that. I would say I get a lot of people that say, oh my goodness, I should have, you should have given away clean underwear before this talk, or they come away literally scared. And I tell them not to be scared because I'm going to show you, these attacks, but really how you prevent them is not that hard. You just have to concentrate on the right defenses.
Don't be scared, but be aware.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. You said you did that for 20 years. That puts you almost at the beginning of a public internet, when the internet really went public. First off, for me, and I'm not going to get all geeked out about this, but what a great job! I mean, you're getting the good part of hacking. You're cracking the code. You're breaking the security. You're the fun part, and you don't have to worry about going to prison, which to me sounds like a really great gig. In those 20 years, and with what you're doing now, what's the top takeaway for you about hacking, about computers and cybersecurity?
So really over 30 years, hacking has almost not changed at all. And once you know how to hack, a lot of people think like these hackers, these mythical uber smart people. They're actually not. They're very average people, but hacking truly isn't that hard. And it's like a skill, like being a plumber or an electrician. Once you understand kind of how to do it and what the tools are, you use kind of the same tools and skills. Hacking is so easy to do on every company. It's not like I'm unique. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm maybe a 5 or a 6 on offensive hacking, breaking into place. On defending, I think I'm the best guy in the world. but I'm only average in the hacking world. I break into everywhere. But it's because hacking isn't that hard, because for some reason people, again, they get lost in all these things they have to defend against. They kind of see all the threats like bubbles in a glass of champagne. Let me give you a real quick example. We've all been told, hey, your credit cards are coming with this new RFID chip, wireless chip, so you can use to pay wirelessly, where you just flash your credit card, near the payment machine. And you've been told that a hacker can walk within 10 foot of you and steal that information. And that's absolutely true. And they've created $1 billion industry where to make these credit card sleeves that you put your credit card in so they can't be sniffed wirelessly. They've made wallets out of the material. They make purses, jeans. There's never been a single real-world crime in the history of Earth where a hacker actually did that. It can be done, but it's not done. And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. I'll go to conferences and I'll have these sleeves, credit card sleeves, and I'll tell people, you don't need them. They're worthless. They still go like hotcakes because people are just kind of lost and they hear it. There's so many threats, like a waterfall of threats coming to them. They kind of get lost about what they really need to concentrate on. So that's really my whole takeaway is hacking really hasn't changed over 30 years. Not at all. The two top things that you can be hacked, which is unpatched software, so you haven't applied a security update, and being socially engineered, tricked into doing something that you shouldn't do. That's the way it's been for 30 years. It hasn't changed, and the ways that you can defend is basically the same. You just have to concentrate on those things.
It sounds like people are just overwhelmed.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, you mentioned the social aspect, phishing. Research I looked into, 70 to 90% of breaches are caused by phishing.
Yep.
Okay, the other, as you just mentioned, unpatched software. Now, the patches are available.
Most of the time, yeah, almost all the time. And even when the patches aren't available, those normally aren't the ones that are compromised a whole lot. When I worked at Microsoft, Microsoft their software gets attacked all the time, but the average exploit that is against a Microsoft Windows machine was 3 to 5 years old, and the people just hadn't patched. I mean, I'm not really sure if I'm blaming Microsoft. You haven't patched your machine in 3 to 5 years.
Why?
People have a lot of threats. We're busy. We have a lot to do. Some people don't even know what the word update means. I have people come up to me at conference, but every fourth conference, I'll have somebody come up to me and go, what did you mean by patching and updating? So they're not educated to even know what it is to be able to do it. And I'm like, that thing that's been bugging you? Every time you go to your computer and you log in, it's telling you need to run this update from the vendor, and it's been there for years, and you're ignoring it. They're like, yeah. I was like, you need to do it. I mean, so I don't know. It's not. And if you were told, like when people come to me and they're like, Roger, how do I defend my computer? And do I need anti-malware? And do I need this and that and blah, blah, blah? I'm like, you don't. You don't need you don't need firewalls. They don't work. Antivirus doesn't work. What you need to do is two things. Patch your stuff and don't get tricked into doing something you shouldn't. You do those two things and you will not get hacked.
One of your presentations is, and you've got many of them, but one of them is 10 ways I can hack you using email. Describe some of those, because I found this fascinating.
Yeah, it was probably the one that surprises the most people is that I can send you an email that arrives in your inbox, and all you do is open it. You look at it in preview mode. You don't even look at it. Kind of your email system puts it there waiting for you to read it, and it includes an embedded link that just simply your email system looking at it sends me your password hash, which is kind of like an encrypted form of your password that I can then break back to your password. Certainly, if I can get you to click on a link, and let me tell you, I can always get you to click on a link. My most popular social engineering scheme when I was a penetration tester was I'd go into a company, I'd research what their next biggest competitor was they were worried about. I'd create a fake email looking like it came from the CFO or CEO and send it to all the employees going, hey, we've decided to merge with our next biggest competitor. Open up this spreadsheet to see if your department or position is going to be still viable after the merger.
In other words, do you still have it? Will you still have a job?
Yeah. They all open it. Or the other one would be your ex-wife's looking for double the child support and open this PDF document. What's weird is women open it and guys without ex-wives open it. Like everybody wants to see what this court case is. But as soon as I can get you to touch the link and you're like, I didn't do anything. Nope, I got your password.
Again, the title of your company, Know Before. And are there not signs on all these that come? Aren't there ways to see who it's from, that it's not really from Microsoft?
Absolutely. Yeah, so there's all kinds of ways. We call it the red flags of social engineering, the things you can look at. Although it's getting a little bit tougher today. Like a lot of the bad guys are breaking into a company who you trust, maybe it's somebody that you get a bill from, you pay on a regular basis. They'll break into that company. They'll actually send an email from them going, hey, we've updated our banking details. You need to update that. And then they wait for the normal invoice to come, and you think you're just paying this normal invoice from the person you get the invoice request from at the normal date, but the other side just sends it to a different bank. Nobody thinks anything's amiss till someone finally goes, hey, you're behind. That's unusual. You're behind a couple of months. You going to pay us? You're like, what do you mean? I paid that on time.
Yeah, so the money's out of my account.
Yeah. So we say so an educational thing, security awareness would be is anytime you get an email asking for you to change wiring instructions or banking information, even if it's from somebody you trust, pick up the phone and call them. Make sure that they meant to do it.
That kind of information has been around. And I'm no computer security expert or cybersecurity expert, but I've heard all this. Mm-hmm. Everybody's heard all this. You just mentioned that hacking really hasn't changed a whole lot over the years. Why is it still such a problem?
Well, so I guess ultimately the technical defenses have not gotten better. So let's say in the car world, right? Cars are still a leading cause of death, but they've actually are now making autonomous cars that in the next 10 years are going to start doing more driving than human beings, and they are overall better than the human beings. And they're getting better at going, oh, there's a car next to us, there's a car coming up, I got to slow down, that sort of stuff. So you have the technical controls of this dangerous thing literally getting better. But in the computer world after 30 years, the technical controls are no better, and in many cases really worse. Like the antivirus companies, like we detect 100% of everything. It's all a lie. It's always been a lie. It's no better today. But part of the reason for that is there used to be, when I started disassembling computer viruses for John McAfee back in 1987 and stuff, I'd get one every couple of weeks. I remember when I finally quit because I got too busy and it was knocking me into my full-time job. I was maybe getting 80 every couple of weeks. Now it's several hundred million unique malware programs are going off every year, and the antivirus products, well, they're trying to be better, but the adversary is just creating so many of them that, literally we're talking millions a day, that it's tough for them to stay up to date, and it gets by and gets on people's computers.
And on the user's end, the consumer, I think I've got virus software, I've got firewalls. Some companies use MFA, thinking, a lot of financial companies do that.
MFA being multi-factor authentication.
Right,
yep.
Right. My bank does that. But what you're telling me and what we talked about.
I can hack it all. One of my most popular talks of my career has been it started off as the 10 ways to hack multi-factor authentication. So right now the conventional wisdom is, hey, you need to get away from passwords because passwords are bad. So you need to go to multi-factor authentication, which is where you're asked to provide some information that comes off your phone or put it in a little special app. You got a little dongle or device, a USB key, or you put biometrics and stuff. And not only can you hack that stuff, you can easily hack it. I can hack every multi-factor authentication method you can throw at me at least 5 to 7 ways. So my talk started off with the 10 ways to hack multi-factor authentication, quickly went to 12. After that, I figured now I was up to 18, I think, within a couple of months. Now I'm up to 38. My next book coming out from Wiley is calling the many ways to hack multi-factor authentication. So people are being moved off of passwords to multi-factor authentication, and they think they're safer. And you are in some ways, but there's a difference between, hey, you're safer in some scenarios, and hey, you don't have to worry about being phished anymore. Because it turns out I can send you an email and phish you past your multi-factor authentication like it was not there. Simple, easy, quick, and I'll do it to everybody. And so you need to be educated to know it helps, but it's not a panacea. You can't all of a sudden throw your brain away. You still have to be worried about people sending you a phishing email.
And because I have MFA, I have firewalls, I have antivirus software, I guess I'm lulled into a false sense of security.
Yeah, so the firewalls, they're good, but they almost have no impact upon whether you're hacked or not. Let me say this. Everybody's told you have to have a long and complex password and you frequently change it every 90 days.
Right.
It has almost no impact on the true risk of whether you're compromised or not. So you have all these companies and all these people that will sit there and debate what my password policy is supposed to be, and they'll get audits where, hey, my password, we only required an 8-character minimum password, but the government says I'm supposed to have a 12-character password, and the government's saying I don't need to change it, but my compliance regulation, HIPAA and SOX and Sarbanes-Oxley and all these people saying I have to change it every 90 days or every 45, it's almost worthless. It has almost no impact upon the risk of whether you are compromised or not. Matter of fact, the U.S. government has said for 3 years that the more often you change that password and the longer you make it, the data shows you're more likely to be hacked. You're better off never changing it and keeping a short password with no complexity. But you should not share it across websites because if you share your passwords, most people share one or two or three passwords across multiple websites. But that's data-driven evangelist, is that when we look at the data, all the companies and people debating how big a password should be, it has almost no impact. It literally is less than 1%, accounts for less than 1%. The complexity and the length and the changing of your password has less than 1% impact upon whether you'll actually be hacked.
You told me there's a common reaction to when you give your presentation. What is it?
Probably surprised just because I give them data.
Well, I was thinking about they say, yeah.
So probably, I won't say it's the most common reaction, but it's a pretty common reaction after I give a presentation. People say, I wish you gave me a clean pair of underwear. As a matter of fact, I remember a company, they heard that so much, they chuckled when they saw it the first time. It became a thing at KnowBe4. I'm kind of known for it. They're like, Roger, we want to make underwear with your picture on and hand it out at conferences. And I'm like, no, my hacker friends will make that into a meme, and I will never hear the end of it. But, I do hear people all the time go, hey, you're scaring me. And actually, I'm not here to scare you, because what I'm really trying to do is make your life easier by saying, don't be scared of RFID tags and all this other stuff. There really is two things, and if you concentrate better on them. And let me say, sometimes you will be compromised because your password was kind of crappy. If it was if your password's password or QVERT here 1234, it's not a good thing. But it's probably not how you're going to be compromised. And yes, an insider can attack you, and a misconfigured firewall could be a problem. Sometimes it is for some companies. The vast majority of people, that is not how they're compromised. And I tell people, if you're at home, make sure all your stuff's patched and up to date, and that you only do it from the official places, and don't get tricked into running something that you shouldn't or giving away your password. You do those two or three things I just said, and you are probably never going to be hacked in your life.
It's good advice.
You're listening to No Password Required.
This is No Password Required. I'm Bill McQueen. I'm speaking with Roger Grimes. But before we move on, we're not going to go into all 18 or however many there are now ways you can. One that I found fascinating was someone sends you something and it appears to be a piece of dust or a hair on your screen. Explain that one.
Yeah, that's a pretty wild one. Let me say it's not a common technique yet, but what it is it works on touch screens, is that someone sends you an email or sends you to a website, and what you think you see is a piece of your hair that's fallen on your screen or a piece of dust, but really it's an embedded object. It's a picture inside of that website or email. When you touch it, it's linked back to the hacker's website, and you get your password hash. And is able to crack. So you think you're wiping it away. It only really works on touch screens, but that's what people and kids, it's all on cell phones and stuff like that. And they're like, oh, I need to get rid of this hair, this piece of dust. Nope, you just sent your password hash. And let me say, almost no one knows that they just sent their password hash anywhere, right? They're like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like they don't know, like it's just a hair or a piece of dust. Oh, it's not? Oh, that's kind of weird. And they don't think about it, but you just sent your password to them.
It might as well be a welcome mat.
Oh, yeah.
Come on in.
But what I will say with this is I'm a data-driven defense, risk management type of guy. Those attacks, that particular attack is really still kind of rare. We're seeing more increasing incidences of it, but it's still a 1%er attack. You don't need to worry about that when 70 to 90% of the attacks are regular phishing emails. So that's why I give these talks sometimes, and people get scared, and they're like, oh, my God, thanks, Roger. I don't want to go home and use my computer. And I'm like, well, I said, I'm showing you some wild stuff. That's what I do to generate some interest, but I'm just trying to generate interest to then give the messages. Concentrate on the two things that have always been the biggest problems, and you'll stop those hackers. Yeah, you could get the hair dust trick. That's not really your biggest risk.
And the two things are that you tell companies.
Yeah, make sure you patch your software, and really you want to patch the operating system, the browser, and any add-ins. Those are the things that are really attacked. On the server side, you want to patch your web servers, your databases, and then the software that's used to manage the server. Those are the ways that they usually break into the web servers. And then social engineering, which is, don't click on things you shouldn't click on, and try not to be tricked out of giving your password to somebody else. And those two things is 99% of the risk in most companies.
And you had mentioned that earlier, but I think it's worth repeating. It really is preventable, and we were talking on the phone last evening before we recorded today, and common sense is a real defense in a lot of these cases. It's like, think about it. Would somebody really send you an email with that message? Is that how the news would be delivered?
But again, I think we're all weak. And one thing I've learned, because I've helped doctors, lawyers, Nobel Prize winners when they've been hacked and socially engineered, has nothing to do with intelligence, and it just has everything to do. Have you heard of this scam? Like one of my favorite scams. that I hear about is they're like, Microsoft called me and says that I possibly have a virus and they're going to help me, fix this virus. Well, I worked for Microsoft for 12 years as a full-time employee, a couple of years before that as a contractor. If you were to find the right phone number to call Microsoft to help you with something and you had a credit card with $400 ready to spend, you probably couldn't get help. That's the truth about Microsoft and Google and everybody. They're too busy to help you. You can't get a person. Well, if you don't know that Microsoft doesn't proactively call you, you might be tricked into thinking that Microsoft's proactively calling you. Or if you're on Craigslist and you're selling a car or something and you don't know that Craigslist, like the most common person that's going to respond to you, is probably a scammer. They're like, hey, I'm going to pay you full price. All you have to do is use my escrow agent or use my shipper. And I'm going to send you a check. And you can take that check to your bank and cash it and everything's going to be fine and send me your item. If you're not aware of these sort of stranger attacks or the hair of the dust or something like that, you get attacked. So that's actually why they call it security awareness training. It's not an intelligence thing. It's like being aware. Even when you're walking through a city, if even here in Tampa, when you walk through a city, there's some dangerous places, some other places. But if you're a stranger, you don't know what those places are. So you ask somebody, hey, where is it all right if I'm out here and walking in this park versus this park? And you kind of learn your surroundings. So security awareness training is about being aware of different types of attacks and being skeptical on the things that could steal money from you.
And that's one of the two things that your company works with clients, training, technical controls, correct?
Yeah, mostly the security awareness training. And let me say this: the average company comes to us we tell them, do a simulated phishing test and send them one of these type of scam emails. But it doesn't even have to look like it's that scammy. Like you would say, anybody seeing this should know that it's a trick, right? About 27 to 33% of all employees in every company we've ever tested click on that email. But after they give them training within a year, it is almost unusual if they don't get that percentage, what we call the phish prone rate, down to 2%. And it's just the idea that you're making people aware, you're giving education, you're building a culture of acceptance. It's like you're holding your kid's hand walking across the street and telling them to look both ways. You're just helping employees understand what are the kind of risks out there. You have to reinforce it. You have to do training more than once a year or twice a year. That doesn't work. Once a month is a good thing to do it, but that significantly reduces risk, and it helps not only the company, but your employee and their kids and their family at home.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second. Your company sells training, security awareness training. A cynic might say, that's where you guys make your money. Are you hyping the situation at all? When someone says that to you or says to your company, how do you respond? How do you put the problem in perspective so that people know
one of the things I say is I absolutely tell people I could be lying to you, right? There's a chance because I'm motivated to sell educational services and things that I could be lying to you. So I tell people from the data-driven perspective, ask yourself the times that you've gotten a virus on your system, how did it occur? When you go into a company or you have a company, when I tell people, how did you get compromised? I don't mean just a human-based attacker, but anytime a virus or worm or adware or something got in your system, how did you get past? Don't believe me. Ask your own experience. Or when you're reading about a company in the paper, whether it's Equifax or somebody like that, Equifax, unpatched web server software. I mean, literally, I've been doing computer security 32 years. At least 30 of those years, I was doing security reviews, probably dozens to over 100 companies each year. And my personal experience, only 2 companies in all of those years, it ever wasn't one of those 2 things. As a matter of fact, when I was working for Microsoft, I was one of the best installers of the most advanced software security systems you can imagine. I did a good job, on time, on budget. I was one of the best people in the world at it. But I noticed all my customers, after I got through putting in this multi-million-dollar system, that they were just as hacked afterwards as before I got there. And it got depressing. And I kept noticing it was always social engineering or unpatched software. And my wife could tell you for a year or two before I went to work for KnowBe4, I picked them because they're the best at what they do there. But I literally was like, I don't know if I'm helping the world because they're still being just as attacked. I spent 3 months there doing this project, giving them smart cards or multi-factor authentication or an advanced detection system, and they're being done in by silly email.
So the question you put to people is, how were you breached before? And I would say the second part of that question, and what was the impact? What did you lose? What did it take to fix? I mean, there's a second part to that
Well, let me say it's the first part that no one really cares about. Like they get a ransomware attack, that locks up the systems and asks for a ransom. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, ransom, ransom, ransom." Most companies don't spend enough time saying, "How did it get in? Was it social engineering? Was it unpatched software?" So they don't fix the root cause exploit of how it got in there, and they're like, "Oh, surprise! They get exploited 8 months again or 12 months again by another ransomware family." By far, most companies spend almost no time actually concentrating on how they actually got exploited. I said, worrying about what happened after you got exploited is like worrying about the brakes to your car after your car has been stolen.
That's the situation today, but we're going to take a look at how things are about to change when No Password Required continues.
You're listening to No Password Required.
Welcome back. This is No Password Required. I'm Bill McQueen, and my guest today is Roger Grimes, a cybersecurity expert with KnowBefore.com. One of the things that's coming up is quantum computing. Not coming up, it's here, but it's growing, it's getting bigger. Give me a definition of quantum computing for people who may not understand what it is.
It is at the very basic level, yeah. So the first quantum computer was in 1998, but standard traditional classical computers work in something called binary digits or bits, where everything is represented as a 0 or a 1, and it can only be one of two things, and at any one time it can only be one thing. But quantum computers are based on quantum mechanics, and the quantum bits called qubits can be a 1 and a 0 and at the same time a 1 and a 0, and they can be all three things at the same time. So that on a regular computer, if you go to like 2 to the 8th or 2 to the 4th or whatever it happens to be, there's 2 to the 3rd, I get 8 things. If you have quantum computers and you have 49 qubits, it's enough to store all the information of every movement that's ever happened since the Big Bang till today. That's what you get with the exponential computational power.
And there's a term called quantum supremacy. What does that mean?
So this is a pretty cool thing. So quantum supremacy is the day when they finally, there's about at least 100 quantum computers in this world. Microsoft, Intel, IBM, Google, lots of companies working on them. China, we're spending tens of billions of dollars all trying to get to this day. And it's the day when one of those quantum computers finally gets powerful enough that it can do something that a classical traditional binary computer can't do, because from that day forward, quantum will be what everybody wants to be on. And remarkably, that's supposed to happen in the next couple of months. Multiple companies, including Google and IBM and a lot of China, has said that's going to happen before the end of 2019. And we've, I don't know when this airs, but there's not that many weeks left. So we are all going to be alive soon when there's this day. There's going to be this line in the sand that's drawn that, okay, we now have this quantum computers are more powerful than classical computers. And we're always going to have classical traditional computers. So some things they do well. And not to mention that the quantum computers have to be super cooled at negative 460 Fahrenheit stuff. But we're going to get around that. But it's going to be this day, like if you can imagine, if you're IBM or Microsoft or whoever, you're not going to say that you don't have the fastest computer. You're not capable of running on the fastest computer. So we're in a dead sprint with China and the main countries are America and China, and most of the other countries are aligned with one of those two or multiple countries. But we're almost there. It's kind of neat to be alive. You and I, Bill, were alive when the internet became the internet, and I'm sure you and I could not have imagined what was going to be created. Like, if you would have told me you were going to take all my music collection, and put it on something the size of a thumb drive, or I was going to have this phone that could look up anything in the world and any fact of history that ever was in a second, you and I couldn't have imagined that, right? And that's what's getting ready to happen with quantum computers. That is going to provide us with such incredible computational power and precision that we're not going to be able to understand what it's going to give us. It's literally going to tell us for the first time ever the fundamental underlying behavior of all nature. And if you don't have that, you really can't we're going to have better medicines, better chemicals, better weather prediction. Matter of fact, when Dorian came through recently, we're like, is it going, which side of the state is it going to? And do I got to pack up my house, or do I stay? Do I go north? Do I go south? But quantum computers, they're actually going to be able to predict those sort of things a lot. You're going to be bored with knowing exactly where it's going to go. Right now, we're kind of bored waiting for it to show up, but we also don't know where it's going to go. Quantum computers are going to change that. We're going to have better self-driving cars, better medicine that works with your body. Right now, every medicine that's made has all these weird side side effects and may cause death, right, or something like that. With quantum computers, they're going to figure out why it interacts with certain people's bodies, because up until the point of quantum computing, we couldn't model quantum behavior, and quantum mechanical behavior underlies all nature. It's how it works.
That's the upside. What's the downside? How will quantum computing impact cybersecurity?
Yeah, so a short time after we get to quantum supremacy, whenever that is, the biggest fear is that it's going to break all traditional public key crypto. The public key crypto is it's most of the internet. So when you get on the internet today, almost always you'll go to HTTPS, hypertext transfer protocol secured. Or what's called TLS, Transfer Layer Security. That's all public key. And what that means is there's this public and private key that creates the encryption. Quantum breaks that. So that's made up of very large prime numbers. That's the security is made because the encryption behind public key cryptography uses two very large prime numbers that classical computers can never, ever break. Quantum computers can break in seconds to maybe 10 minutes. So when we get to the quantum supremacy, with a short period after that, if not within a couple of years, we're going to get to the quantum crypto break, and that's going to break most of the internet. It's going to break Wi-Fi. It's going to break all kinds of communications around the world. Today, the American and Chinese governments, and I don't know this for sure, but I'm sure they are. They're actually sniffing everybody's wireless networks for the adversaries, storing that information for the day when quantum crypto break happens, because they'll be able to read those secrets. Many times our secrets and secrets at our company, we want them to be secrets for 5 and 10 years. Sniff them today, because within 3 years, they're probably going to have it, and they'll be able to read those secrets. They'll be able to read the other government secrets that have been secret forever. Pretty much they'll have an open book.
And to put that in perspective, you mentioned the TLS technology. Today protects about 88% of the internet. That will no longer be of any service, correct?
Yeah. The good thing is that our government and other governments are working on what's called post-quantum encryption. So they're creating cryptography algorithms that don't use large prime numbers. And so right now we're already in the middle of a contest that NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, implemented a couple of years ago, trying to create these new encryption algorithms that will not be susceptible to quantum computers. They had 80 people. In the first round, 80 people applied. They got it down. Second round's down to 26. And by 2022 or 2024, they're going to select the final winning United States standards. So we need to move people from the quantum susceptible ciphers, which is almost everything today, to stuff less quantum susceptible. Matter of fact, that's actually my most recent book from Wiley Computers called The Cryptography Apocalypse. That's just coming out, or it's already available on Amazon. But it all talks about that coming quantum break and how companies can prepare, because you can start doing things today that protects your company for when that quantum break happens.
But is that race to find the software that is less quantum susceptible, how is that race going with the race toward quantum supremacy?
Actually, Bill, that's a pretty good, astute point there. They're always in juxtaposition to each other, right? Kind of like our own security in America, the NSA, National Security Agency. I think 90% of their budget is to break into other people's secrets. Although they're not supposed to break in our secrets, and only 10% of their budget is to protect us from other people breaking into us. And of course, China's got the other way, right? In Russia, they got the same thing going on. There is this tension always, but I will say that so they're trying to get us to that post-quantum world where we're not as susceptible to it. But I think it's highly likely. I personally believe that the U.S. government and maybe other people have already broken and done the quantum supremacy and the quantum crypto break, and they're not telling us, because it would be silly for any government actually getting that particular, reaching that milestone to tell anyone else. Because once you've broken it, you can sniff secrets at will, and that's what 90% of your job is. Why would you tell anybody that you've done that? Because if we learn that they've already done the quantum crypto break, well, instead of waiting to 2020 or 2024, we would snap into it now. We'd start saying, hey, what's the best one now? We'd all start moving to it. So I think it's to the advantage of any government to – now let me say, all the governments always lie to us, and they always tell us much later. Like even when TLS, or the public key crypto, was first made in 1973, they didn't tell us that they actually had it for 19 years. And we were actually using it. Two Americans, Whitfield Diffie and Mark Hellman, publicly announced public key cryptography in 1976, and for 19 years we thought they were the inventors of it, but it turns out multiple other governments had discovered it years before and didn't tell us till 19 years later that Whitfield Diffie and Mark Hellman were the ones that, that's in all the history books. It's like, oh, these two American guys, hippie guys, were the ones that discovered it. They weren't. It was some other military, national security guys in different countries, and they shared it with us. And those three governments, actually, the United States, British, and I forget where the other guy was from, but they kept it secret for 19 years.
So whether quantum supremacy has happened, is happening at this moment, or is about to happen, it is a reality.
It's imminent.
It's imminent. You've called it a day of reckoning. You've compared it with Y2K.
Mm-hmm.
With Y2K, we could see it coming. We knew, at this time, on this date, it's not quite the same thing with quantum supremacy. When Y2K happened, and there was so much hype about it, and so much, planes are going to be falling out of the sky, and this and that and the other, none of that happened. Did that create a false sense of quantum supremacy is no big deal?
Yeah, absolutely. So great point. I actually opened my book. It's the first paragraph in my book about Y2K. Y2K was so successful and nothing happened that most people historically look upon it. It was a big bunch of worry about nothing. But the reality is it was a big push to get lots of stuff fixed in the last couple of years, especially the last year. You and I were alive during that. And we were like, okay, the great thing was you knew when it was going to occur, when it was going to be a problem. And then we all went around and we were scanning our devices and hiring people to scan our devices and our software. I remember there was this great movie. I forget, it was the Y2K disaster movie where it had planes falling out of the sky. But people remember it as, hey, we worried too much. It wasn't about that. I think it's a tribute to what the global community can do to prepare for something we can see. Mm-hmm. And I only hope that our quantum, or what's called post-quantum preparations, proceeds the same way, because that actually is a historical landmark of global cooperation that worked just in time, because we did the hard work, especially in the last year. Everybody was panicking. So when it finally happened, there were some things that broke, but planes weren't falling from the sky.
Right.
I hope the quantum cryptographic break, I'll be honest with you, I don't want it to be a surprise. I want it to be nice, smooth, and orderly, because if it happens in a snap thing, it breaks the internet. It breaks Visa. It breaks Wi-Fi. It breaks Bitcoin. I gave a talk last night to a bunch of blockchain Bitcoin people at Block Spaces, which is awesome organization here in Tampa. But I was like, yeah, it breaks Bitcoin. It breaks every cryptocurrency I know about. But I said, don't panic. It breaks the banking SWIFT system. It breaks Visa, right? Like, it breaks everything. So I hope we're able to do a slower multi-year transition that we did with Y2K and a few other things. I hope that's how it happens. The problem is there's a lot more incentive for our adversaries to get that thing. So in Y2K, it wasn't like China and America were competing against each other. We were all in this, hey, we're humanity, we need to fix this problem. This other problem, there's a military benefit and a nation-state benefit for you getting this advantage and not telling your adversary and vice versa.
We're almost out of time, but there's a couple other things I want to go over. You talk about, when thinking about protecting oneself or one's company, one's government against quantum supremacy, that an entity, whether it's a government, a company, an individual, you need to be you call it crypto agility. Mm-hmm. Explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, crypto agility or crypto agile. Mm-hmm. What that means is that all the software and devices you use should be able to be modified to have different cipher algorithms. So like with the Microsoft software, they did it really well, is that whatever software you're using with Microsoft, you can easily install and uninstall the ciphers that are used. So use the same software, but change the ciphers when you need to. Most software, the ciphers are hard-coded, and most devices hard-coded, and it's not easy to be able to upgrade them and change them. So I tell all organizations, if nothing else, that you get out of quantum supremacy coming or the quantum crypto break, is start to require that your vendors give you, if you use encryption software, and we all do, that it's able to be relatively easy to switch it out. So when we need to move to the post-quantum ciphers that are selected by NIST, we're all able to do so, and do so fairly easy versus having to replace everything.
Last point. You said that society has become tolerant of hacking, tolerant of cybercrime, if you will. Why, and what do we do about it?
Yeah, so this is something I share with defenders because I'm sitting in rooms all the time where all these computer security people want to get the best security. Like with multi-factor authentication, I know how to make a device Roger can't hack, and they come up with this 7-factor way that requires that someone look at a sheet and can do some math and put these colors together. I'm like, nobody's going to do that to log into Amazon. Like, yeah, they will. I'm like, no, the truth is, for all of humanity, we take a certain amount of risk. It's about risk management. Like cars are probably one of the most killingest things. I think in your lifetime, you're a 1 in 10,000 chance to die in a car, but we're still driving them at 75 miles per hour, on the interstate. We could make them safer, right? We could make them, you have to drive at 5 miles per hour and you have to wear a race car helmet and have a 6-point restraint, but we don't. And the same thing, and we have crime in real life. We're always going to have cyber crime, and we want pretty good security that doesn't cause us a lot of hassles. And we will put up with a certain amount of crime, just like we do crime today in every city we live in. The problem is the internet is like the wild, wild west, and there is at times more crime than legitimate traffic on it. It can be significantly better. Me and a lot of other people know how to make it significantly better. We're in the wild, wild west. We just want to kind of get us to where we're in kind of a metropolitan city where we keep it down to more of a background noise, something we don't fear. But I do try to tell the defenders, if you create the most secure option possible, users probably aren't going to use it.
So it does them no good.
Yeah. So don't design yourself out of the customers using your product.
If someone wanted to find your blog or wanted to buy one of your books, where can you be found on the internet?
Yeah, certainly if you go to Amazon and put in Roger A. Grimes, I'm in middle initial A, that'll get you to all my books. And I'm on Twitter at Roger A. Grimes. I'm on LinkedIn, I think same thing, Roger A. Grimes. So I'm all over there. You either get me or like this past Canadian Prime Minister, that he was the leader of the Labour Party in Newfoundland. Look for the guy that's not in charge of Canada or the fishing rights of Canada.
And he didn't know much about the internet. So.
Yeah. I get hate mail every time he would block fishing rights.
Roger, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
You've been listening to No Password Required. My guest has been Roger Grimes of KnowBefore.com. I'm Bill McQueen. Thank you for joining us.
No Password Required is a presentation of Cyber Florida, located on the Tampa campus of the University of South Florida. To hear other episodes of No Password Required, visit cyberflorida.org/podcast.